All right, let's go on a little linguistic adventure. We're going to uncover a secret that's hiding in plain sight, a really deep grammatical code that's buried in sentences so simple you probably say them every single day without even thinking about it.
So let's start with two super simple sentences. On one side, you've got John laughed, an action that somebody does. And on the other, the vase broke, something that just happens to an object. Now, at first glance, they look identical, right? Noun, verb. They seem like grammatical twins.
But here's the real mystery we're diving into. Are they actually the same? Well, it turns out there is a massive difference between these two, a hidden distinction that tells us something really profound about the structure of human language itself.
Okay, so to crack this puzzle, we've got to start with the verbs. The real clue isn't in the nouns, John or the vase, but in the actions themselves. Turns out we need to understand two very different kinds of intransitive verbs.
First up, we have what linguists call ergative verbs. This is where the subject is an active doer. So in John laughed, John is the one making it happen. He's in control. This category includes verbs like running, working, talking, stuff you actively do.
And then on the other side, we have unaccusative verbs. With these, the subject is totally passive. It's an undergoer. It doesn't perform the action happens to it. The vase didn't decide to break, it's just what happened. Verbs like falling, arriving, or dying all fit this mold.
So we have this cool theory of doers versus undergoers. But how do we know this isn't just, some philosophical idea? How can we actually prove it's a real, concrete thing in our grammar? Well, this is where linguists basically put on their detective hats and came up with some really clever tests.
So yeah, how do we prove this is real and not just a gut feeling? Lucky for us, there's a fantastic little grammatical test that makes this hidden difference pop right out into the open.
It's called the causative alternation test. Let's try it with an unaccusative verb. We'll start with, the door opened. Here, the door is our subject. Now, can we add a doer to cause this to happen? Of course. Mary opened the door. And look what happened. The original subject, the door, just became the object of the new sentence. It works like a charm.
Okay, now let's run that exact same test on our unergative verb. We start with, the crowd laughed. The crowd is the doer. Now, let's try to add someone to cause the action. The comedian laughed the crowd. Yeah, that just sounds completely wrong. It's totally ungrammatical. And boom, this shows us there's a deep structural difference. The grammar itself is telling us these verbs are not the same.
This whole discovery led to a major theory in linguistics called the unaccusative hypothesis. And the core idea is pretty wild. The subject of an unaccusative verb, like the vase, is really just an object in disguise. Deep down, at a fundamental level, it behaves like an object.
But this is where the story gets so much bigger. Just when we think we've got the puzzle figured out for English, it turns out this hidden difference we've been hunting for is completely out in the open in a ton of other languages all over the world.
So what if this whole unaccusative thing isn't just a quirky rule we need special tests to find? What if it's actually a fossil, a clue that points to a completely different and maybe even much older way of organizing grammar?
Okay, this table maps out two major ways languages can be built. English is what we call nominative accusative. You can see we group all subjects together. So the A for agent in Mary opened the door and the S for subject in John laughed get treated the same. But just look at that second row. Ergative absolutive languages do something amazing. They group the S, that intransitive subject, together with the P, the patient or object. They actually lump the undergoer together with the object.
Let's break that down because it's a huge deal. In these languages, the doer, subject, like John laughing, gets its own special marking. But the undergoer subject, like our vase breaking, is treated as if it's in the exact same category as the object of a sentence. The very distinction that we had to use a clever test to find in English is just normal everyday grammar for them.
So how do they do it? Well, they have a specific grammatical tool that makes this whole system work, and believe it or not, it's the key to solving our original mystery. It's called the absolutive case, and it's basically one single grammatical marking that gets used for two different roles, the subject of an intransitive verb and the object of a transitive verb. Think of it as the go-to case for any noun that's an undergoer in a sentence. And from that perspective, looking through the lens of an ergative absolutive language, our original sentences were never the same to begin with.
John, in John laughed, is an active doer, sure, but the vase in the vase broke is treated just like an object. The puzzle we started with, it isn't even a puzzle in these languages. It's just how grammar works.
So what's the grand finale here? This isn't just a tale of two different ways to build a language. This is a clue to something much, much bigger. The theory is that this whole distinction is actually a fossil, a remnant from a really early stage of human language.
The theory kind of goes like this. Way back in the day, early human proto-language might have had one universal, absolutive-like system. Then, over thousands of years, that single system started to branch out, eventually splitting into the two major types we see today, the ergative languages and accusative languages like English. And this brings us right to the main idea. The whole reason we even have this hidden unaccusative thing in English, the reason the vase broke feels so grammatically different, is because it's an echo, a fossil of that more ancient absolutive system that our own grammar evolved from.
So let's just recap the journey real quick. We started with two sentences that looked the same and found a secret grammatical difference. We used a clever test to prove it was real. Then we discovered that our secret is actually the default setting in many other languages, which leads us to this huge idea that we're literally looking at a fossil of how human language itself grew up. It just goes to show you, buried inside our most basic, everyday sentences is the ancient history of human thought. And it really leaves you with a fascinating question, doesn't it? What other ancient secrets are hiding in the words we speak every single day?